I never thought a $50 dispute would end with me owning a $250,000 clubhouse. But here we are, and the look on Patricia Henderson's face when the judge handed down that verdict was worth every sleepless night and every dollar I spent on legal fees. It started on a Tuesday morning in May 2024, when I found an envelope tucked into my mailbox at my home in Clearwater Estates, a planned community just outside Phoenix, Arizona. The envelope was cream-colored with the HOA logo embossed on the back, and I knew before opening it that nothing good ever came in those fancy envelopes. I was right. Inside was a notice stating that I owed the Clearwater Estates Homeowners Association $50 for an alleged violation of community standards, specifically for leaving my trash cans visible from the street for more than 12 hours after collection day. The thing is, I had not left my trash cans out. I worked from home as a software consultant, and my routine was ironclad. Every Thursday morning, I rolled the cans to the curb at 6 in the morning before trash collection at 7. By 8, I was back outside, rolling them into my garage. I had been doing this exact routine for the 3 years I had lived in Clearwater Estates, and I had never once received a violation notice. I called the HOA office that afternoon, and a woman with a syrupy, sweet voice that barely masked her condescension answered. Clearwater Estates HOA, this is Debbie speaking. How may I assist you today? Hi, Debbie. This is Marcus Chen from 4782 Sagaro Lane. I received a violation notice today, and I believe there has been a mistake. Oh, I am sure there has been no mistake, Mr. Chen. Our board president personally documented the violation with photographic evidence. Can I see this photographic evidence? Because I know for a fact that my trash cans were not left out. There was a pause, then a rustling of papers. The photographs are property of the HOA and are maintained in our files. You can request to view them at the next board meeting, which is scheduled for the 3rd Tuesday of next month. That's almost a month away. The notice says I have 2 weeks to pay the fine or face additional penalties. That is correct, Mr. Chen. Payment can be made online or by mail. Have a wonderful day. She hung up before I could respond. I stared at my phone, fury building in my chest. $50 was not going to break me financially, but the principle of the matter ate at me. I had not violated any rule, and I was not about to pay a fine for something I did not do. I decided to wait until the board meeting to see this so-called evidence before making any decisions. 3 days later, another letter arrived. This one informed me that since I had not paid the initial fine, I was now being assessed a $25 late fee. I called the HOA office again, and this time a man answered. "This is ridiculous," I said after explaining the situation. "I have not even had a chance to dispute the original fine, and you are already adding late fees." "Sir, the fine was assessed on the 15th, and payment was due within 72 hours. It is now the 18th. The late fee is automatic according to our bylaws. Your notice said I had 2 weeks to pay. 2 weeks to pay before further action is taken. The late fee is not further action, it is part of the payment structure." The circular logic made my head spin. "I want to speak to the board president. Mrs. Henderson does not take calls directly. You can email her through the HOA website, or you can attend the monthly board meeting." I hung up and immediately drafted an email to Patricia Henderson, the board president. I kept it professional and factual, explaining that I had not violated any rules and requesting to see the photographic evidence immediately so we could resolve this matter. I sent it at 3 in the afternoon on a Friday. By Monday, I had not received a response. On Tuesday, another letter arrived, this time informing me that my account was now 60 days past due and that the HOA was initiating Lien proceedings against my property. 60 days past due. The original notice had been dated less than 2 weeks ago. That was when I realized something was very wrong. I pulled out all 3 letters and examined them carefully. The first letter was dated May 15th, which was the date I received it. But the second letter, the one with the late fee, had a date of March 15th in small print at the top of the page, even though I received it in May. The third letter referenced a 60-day delinquency, which would only make sense if the original violation had occurred in March, not May. Someone had backdated documents to manufacture a delinquency that did not exist. I am not a lawyer, but I had enough experience dealing with contracts in my software work to know that document fraud was serious business. I scanned all 3 letters and every envelope they came in, noting the postmark dates, and then I drove to the Clearwater Estates HOA office, which was located in the community clubhouse. The clubhouse was a sprawling single-story building with a Spanish tile roof and cream stucco walls. It featured a fitness center, a pool, tennis courts, and a large event space that residents could rent for parties. The HOA office occupied a small suite near the main entrance. When I walked in, I found Debbie sitting behind a desk, typing on a computer. "I need to speak with Patricia Henderson," I said without preamble. Debbie looked up and recognition flickered across her face. "Mr. Chen, Mrs. Henderson is not available. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but I have a serious problem with these." I placed the 3 letters on her desk. "These documents have been backdated, and I am being charged late fees for a violation I did not commit." Debbie barely glanced at the letters. "All HOA correspondence is handled according to our established procedures. If you have a dispute, you will need to submit it in writing and wait for the board to review it. I already emailed Mrs. Henderson. She has not responded. Mrs. Henderson is very busy. She will respond when she has time. I want to see the photographic evidence of my supposed violation, right now." Debbie's expression hardened. "As I told you on the phone, photographic evidence can be reviewed at the board meeting." "That is 3 weeks away, and according to this," I tapped the third letter, "you are already putting a lien on my house. I have a right to see the evidence against me before you take action that could affect my property rights. Sir, I am going to have to ask you to leave. If you continue to be disruptive, I will call security." "Security? This is an HOA office, not a fortress. I am a homeowner in this community and I am entitled to answers." The door behind Debbie opened, and a woman in her mid-50s stepped out. She had blonde hair cut in a severe bob, sharp blue eyes, and an expression that suggested she smelled something unpleasant. She wore a cream blazer over a floral blouse, and her name tag read Patricia Henderson, board president. "Is there a problem, Debbie?" Her voice was clipped and authoritative. "This is Mr. Chen from Sagaro Lane. He is disputing a violation notice." Patricia turned her gaze on me, and I felt like I was being assessed and found wanting. "Mr. Chen, I received your email. The violation stands. You left your trash cans visible from the street in direct violation of Section 7, Paragraph 3 of our community covenants. I did not leave my trash cans out. And these letters have been backdated to manufacture a delinquency." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you accusing this HOA of fraud?" "I am saying that the dates on these documents do not match the dates I received them, and I am being charged late fees based on a timeline that does not exist. The dates reflect when the violations were documented and when the fines were assessed. If there was a delay in mailing, that is not the HOA's responsibility. You are still liable for the fines." "Then show me the photographic evidence." "No," the flat refusal caught me off guard. "Excuse me?" "I do not have to show you anything, Mr. Chen. The board has reviewed the evidence and made a determination. You can appeal at the next board meeting, but until then, the fines stand, and if they are not paid within 7 days, we will proceed with the lien." You cannot put a lien on my house over $50. $75 now with the late fee, and yes, we absolutely can. It is all spelled out in the covenants you signed when you purchased your home. Perhaps you should have read them more carefully. She turned back toward her office. I will fight this, I said. She paused and looked over her shoulder. You are welcome to try, but I assure you the HOA has far more resources than you do and we will prevail. Good day, Mr. Chen. The door closed behind her with a decisive click. I stood there for a moment, rage and disbelief warring in my chest. Then I gathered the letters from Debbie's desk, ignoring her glare, and walked out of the clubhouse. Over the next week, I did my research. I pulled out my copy of the Clearwater Estates covenants, conditions, and restrictions, all 73 pages of dense legal text. I read every word, making notes and highlighting relevant sections. Section 7, Paragraph 3 did indeed prohibit leaving trash cans visible from the street except on collection days. But it also included language about notification procedures, dispute resolution, and the timeline for assessing fines. According to the covenants, a homeowner was supposed to receive written notice of a violation and be given 30 days to correct it before any fine could be assessed. In cases where the violation was not corrected, the homeowner was to receive a second notice with a fine amount and 30 days to pay before any late fees could be added. Only after 90 days of non-payment could the HOA initiate lien proceedings. None of that had happened. I had received a notice with an immediate $50 fine, then a late fee just 3 days later, and then a lien notice less than 2 weeks after that. The HOA had violated its own procedures at every step. I also researched Arizona HOA law and discovered that HOAs were required to follow strict procedures when imposing fines and liens. Homeowners had the right to a hearing before the board, the right to review all evidence against them, and the right to appeal any decisions. The HOA had denied me all of those rights. Armed with this information, I drafted a formal dispute letter citing the specific sections of the covenants and Arizona law that the HOA had violated. I sent it via certified mail to both the HOA office and to Patricia Henderson's home address, which was listed in the community directory. I also sent copies to every member of the HOA board. 2 days later, I received a response. It was not an acknowledgement of my dispute or an apology for the procedural errors. It was a notice that the HOA had placed a lien on my property for $75, plus an additional $300 in administrative fees related to the lien filing. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the notice, and felt something shift inside me. This was not about $50 anymore. This was about a corrupt HOA board that thought it could bully homeowners into compliance through intimidation and illegal tactics. If they were doing this to me, they were probably doing it to others. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Jennifer Ortiz, and she specialized in HOA disputes. I found her through an online legal directory with excellent reviews. When I explained the situation, she listened quietly, asking occasional questions. When I finished, there was a long pause. Mr. Chen, this is one of the more egregious cases I have seen, and I have seen a lot. What they are doing is not just a violation of their own covenants, it is potentially criminal fraud. So you will take my case? Absolutely. But I need to be upfront with you about costs. HOA litigation can be expensive, and there is no guarantee of recovery even if we win. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Patricia Henderson's smug face and her certainty that the HOA would prevail because they had more resources. Yes, I am prepared. I want to fight this. Good. I will need copies of everything you have, all correspondence, the covenants, and any other documentation. I will also need you to sign a retainer agreement. My rate is $300 an hour, and I will need a $5,000 retainer to start. $5,000. It was a lot of money to fight a $75 fine. But I had savings and I had principles. I will get you everything today. Excellent. One more thing, Mr. Chen. In cases like this, I always recommend that my clients document everything. Keep a journal of every interaction with the HOA, save every email, record every phone call if Arizona law permits. The more evidence we have, the stronger our case. I spent the rest of the day organizing documents and writing a detailed timeline of everything that had happened. That evening, I drove to Jennifer's office in Scottsdale and delivered a thick folder of materials. She flipped through it, her expression growing more serious with each page. "They really backdated these documents," she said, holding up the second letter. "Look at this date, header versus the postmark. That is documentary fraud, and it is a crime. What do we do? First, we file a response to the lien. Then we countersue the HOA for wrongful lien, violation of the covenants, and fraud. We are also going to request an audit of their records, because I would bet money that you are not the only homeowner they have done this to. Can we win?" She looked up at me and her expression was fierce. "Mr. Chen, we are not just going to win, we are going to make an example of them." Over the next month, Jennifer worked with the intensity of a force of nature. She filed a motion to remove the lien, arguing that it had been placed without proper procedure. She filed a counterclaim against the HOA for wrongful lien, seeking damages and attorney's fees. And she subpoenaed the HOA's financial records and violation files for the past 3 years. The HOA's response was to hire a large law firm out of Phoenix, and their first move was to file a motion to dismiss our counterclaim, arguing that the covenants gave the HOA broad discretion in enforcement matters, and that we had no grounds to sue. We went to court for the first hearing in July. The courthouse in downtown Phoenix was a modern glass and steel building, and the courtroom was surprisingly small and utilitarian. Judge Michael Reeves presided, a gray-haired man in his 60s with a reputation for no-nonsense jurisprudence. The HOA's attorney, a polished man in an expensive suit named Richard Carlson, argued that the HOA had followed all proper procedures and that the lien was valid. He presented a timeline that matched the dates on the backdated documents, conveniently ignoring the postmark dates. When it was Jennifer's turn, she calmly walked the judge through the evidence, pointing out the discrepancies between document dates and postmarks, the violation of the HOA's own procedures, and the lack of any photographic evidence despite the HOA's claims. "Your Honor," she concluded, "this is not a case of a homeowner trying to avoid a legitimate fine. This is a case of an HOA engaging in systematic fraud to extract money from homeowners through manufactured violations and illegal liens. We are asking the court to remove the lien immediately and allow our counterclaim to proceed." Judge Reeves studied the documents in front of him for a long moment, then he looked at Carlson. "Mr. Carlson, I am troubled by these postmark dates. Can you explain why the document dated March 15th was not postmarked until May?" Carlson shifted slightly. "Your Honor, there may have been administrative delays in mailing, but the important date is when the violation was documented, not when the notice was mailed. That might be true if the HOA's own covenants did not require written notice and specific timelines, according to the covenants submitted by Ms. Ortiz. Homeowners are supposed to receive notice and have 30 days to correct a violation before any fine is assessed. That did not happen here. Your Honor, the board has discretion in how it interprets and enforces the covenants. Discretion is not the same as ignoring the plain language of the contract, Mr. Carlson. I am granting the motion to remove the lien. The HOA is ordered to release the lien within 7 days. As for the counterclaim, that will proceed to discovery." We will reconvene in 90 days for a status conference. He banged his gavel, and just like that, the Lien was gone. I felt a surge of relief and vindication. Jennifer smiled as we left the courtroom. That went well. Judge Reeves sees through their nonsense. Now comes the hard part. What is the hard part? Discovery. We are going to dig into every file they have, and they are going to fight us every step of the way. She was right. Over the next 3 months, the HOA's attorneys delayed, objected, and obstructed at every turn. They claimed that the financial records we requested were confidential. They argued that violation files were privileged. They produced documents in such disorganized fashion that it took weeks to make sense of them. But Jennifer was relentless. She filed motion after motion, and Judge Reeves grew increasingly impatient with the HOA's tactics. Finally, in October, he ordered the HOA to produce all requested documents within 14 days or face sanctions. When the documents finally arrived, they filled 3 large boxes. Jennifer and I spent a weekend in her office going through everything, and what we found was stunning. Over the past 3 years, the HOA had issued more than 200 violation notices to homeowners in Clearwater Estates. Of those, nearly half followed the same pattern as mine: backdated documents, compressed timelines, immediate liens. The violations ranged from trash cans to lawn height to unapproved paint colors, but the playbook was always the same. Assess a fine, add late fees within days, threaten a lien within weeks. We also discovered that the HOA had collected more than $50,000 in fines and fees over that period, but there was no clear accounting of where that money had gone. The financial records showed deposits, but very few corresponding expenses. The clubhouse maintenance budget had not increased. No major repairs had been made. The money seemed to have simply vanished into the general fund. "This is embezzlement," I said, staring at a spreadsheet of deposits and expenses. Jennifer nodded grimly. "Or at the very least, gross financial mismanagement. We need to expand our claim. This is not just about your lien anymore. This is a class action." A class action. We represent not just you, but all the homeowners who have been victimized by this scheme. We will need to notify everyone who received a violation notice in the past 3 years and give them the option to join the lawsuit. Will they join? Some will. Others will be too intimidated or too tired to fight. But we only need a few to make this case devastating for the HOA. We sent notices to every homeowner who had received a violation in the past 3 years. Within 2 weeks, 47 homeowners had joined the class action. Their stories were heartbreakingly similar to mine. Bogus violations, backdated documents, immediate fines, threats of liens. Several had actually paid the fines just to make the harassment stop, even though they knew the violations were false. One woman, elderly and living on a fixed income, had paid nearly $1,000 over 2 years for violations she never committed. She broke down crying when Jennifer interviewed her. "I thought I had no choice. They said they would take my house." The case exploded. Local news picked up the story after one of the homeowners tipped off a reporter. Suddenly, cameras were parked outside the Clearwater Estates clubhouse, and Patricia Henderson was being chased down for comment. She refused to speak on camera, but the HOA issued a statement through their attorneys denying all allegations and claiming that they had always acted in accordance with the covenants and Arizona law. The community was divided. Some homeowners rallied behind the board, arguing that rules needed to be enforced to maintain property values. Others were outraged by the revelations of fraud and mismanagement. HOA board meetings became contentious shouting matches. At one meeting in November, security had to be called when a fistfight nearly broke out between 2 homeowners on opposite sides of the dispute. Through it all, Patricia Henderson remained defiant. At a board meeting that I attended with a dozen other plaintiffs, she stood at the podium and declared, "This HOA has a duty to maintain standards in our community. If a few homeowners are too lazy or too cheap to follow the rules, that is not our problem. We will continue to enforce the covenants as we see fit." The arrogance was breathtaking. Jennifer leaned over and whispered, "She is digging her own grave. Keep recording." I had my phone out, recording the entire meeting as Arizona law allowed. Patricia's statement would become a key piece of evidence in the trial. The trial was scheduled for March 2025. In the weeks leading up to it, Jennifer prepared meticulously. She deposed Patricia Henderson, Debbie, and the other board members. She hired a forensic accountant to trace the missing HOA funds. She interviewed dozens of homeowners and compiled a database of violations, fines, and liens that painted a damning picture of systematic abuse. The HOA's attorneys tried one last time to settle. They offered to return all fines paid by the plaintiffs and drop any outstanding liens. In exchange, we would agree to drop the lawsuit and sign non-disclosure agreements. Jennifer called me to discuss the offer. "It is not a terrible deal. You would get your $75 back, and so would everyone else. The case would go away." But Patricia Henderson would still be in charge of the HOA. She would still be able to do this to other people. Probably yes. Then no deal, we go to trial. I was hoping you would say that. Because I really want to destroy them in court. The trial began on March 10, 2025, in the same courthouse where we had won the motion to remove the lien. Judge Reeves presided, and the courtroom was packed with homeowners, reporters, and curious onlookers. The HOA's attorneys had brought in additional support, and their table was piled high with binders and documents. Jennifer's opening statement was clear and devastating. She walked the jury through the pattern of fraud, the backdated documents, the missing funds, and the systematic victimization of homeowners. She held up blown-up copies of my 3 letters, showing the jury the discrepancies between dates and postmarks. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, "this case is about power and abuse." The defendants believed that they could act with impunity because they controlled the HOA. They believed that homeowners would be too intimidated or too poor to fight back. They were wrong. Mr. Chen and the other plaintiffs are here today to hold them accountable. The HOA's attorney, Carlson, tried to paint the plaintiffs as malcontents who refused to follow reasonable rules. He argued that the HOA had discretion in enforcement and that any procedural irregularities were minor administrative errors, not fraud. But his argument fell apart during the testimony phase. Jennifer called homeowner after homeowner to the stand, each telling their story of bogus violations and harassment. She called the forensic accountant, who testified that more than $30,000 in HOA funds could not be accounted for. She called a handwriting expert who testified that signatures on some of the violation notices appeared to have been forged. And then she called Patricia Henderson to the stand. Patricia took the stand with the same air of superiority she always carried. She wore a navy suit and pearl earrings, and she looked at Jennifer with barely concealed contempt. Jennifer started gently. "Mrs. Henderson, how long have you been president of the Clearwater Estates HOA? 5 years. And in that time, how many violation notices have been issued?" "I do not have an exact number. Our records show 217. Does that sound accurate, if you say so? Of those 217 violations, how many resulted in fines?" "I do not keep track of every detail. That is what we have staff for. But you personally approved many of these fines, did you not?" "As board president, I review and approve enforcement actions, yes." Jennifer held up a stack of documents. "These are violation notices bearing your signature. Can you confirm that you signed these?" Patricia glanced at them dismissively. "Yes, those are my signatures." Including this one, Jennifer held up the first letter I had received, the one dated May 15th. Yes, and this one. She held up the second letter, dated March 15th. Yes, Mrs. Henderson, this second letter is dated March 15th, but it was not postmarked until May 17th. Can you explain that? As I said before, there may have been administrative delays. A 2-month delay for a single letter, it is possible. Is it also possible that this letter was backdated to manufacture a delinquency that did not exist? Absolutely not. That is a baseless accusation. Jennifer walked to the evidence table and picked up a ledger. This is the HOA's financial ledger for 2024. According to this ledger, Mr. Chen's fine was recorded as assessed on March 15th. But according to the HOA's own violation log, Mr. Chen's supposed violation was not documented until May 14th. Can you explain that discrepancy? Patricia's composure slipped for the first time. I do not handle the day-to-day bookkeeping, but you do review the financial records, correct? As board president, you have access to all HOA accounts and ledgers. Yes. So you would have seen this discrepancy. I may not have noticed it. Or you noticed it and chose to ignore it because you were part of a scheme to defraud homeowners. Objection. Carlson was on his feet. Counsel is badgering the witness. Sustained, Judge Reeves said. Miss Ortiz, rephrase. Jennifer smiled. Mrs. Henderson, let me ask you directly. Did you knowingly backdate documents to manufacture delinquencies and extract fines from homeowners? No, I did not. Did you knowingly approve liens against homeowners who were not actually delinquent? No. Did you embezzle HOA funds for your personal use? Patricia's face flushed red. How dare you? I have dedicated 5 years of my life to this community, and you have the audacity to accuse me of theft. I am asking a question, Mrs. Henderson. Did you embezzle HOA funds? No. Jennifer paused, then walked back to the evidence table. She picked up a bank statement and held it up. This is a bank statement for an account in your name at Desert Sky Credit Union. Over the past 2 years, this account has received deposits totaling $28,000 in cash. Can you explain where that money came from? Patricia's eyes widened. That is a personal account. It has nothing to do with the HOA. Then where did the cash come from? I do not have to answer that. Actually, you do. You are under oath. Patricia glanced at Carlson, who looked like he wanted to object but could not find the grounds. It was gifts from family, she finally said. $28,000 in cash gifts over 2 years. That is quite generous. Do you have any documentation of these gifts, receipts, thank you notes, anything? No. How convenient. Jennifer turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, the HOA collected approximately $50,000 in fines over the past 3 years. $30,000 of that is unaccounted for in the HOA's financial records. Mrs. Henderson has personally deposited $28,000 in cash into her personal account during that same period. I will let you draw your own conclusions. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Reeves banged his gavel. Order. Patricia Henderson looked like she was about to be sick. Carlson requested a recess and Judge Reeves granted it. During the break, I saw Patricia arguing furiously with Carlson in the hallway. Her composure was completely gone, replaced by panic. When the trial resumed, Carlson announced that the HOA wished to make a revised settlement offer. Judge Reeves allowed him to present it. The offer was staggering. The HOA would return all fines paid by plaintiffs, remove all liens, pay attorneys' fees, and submit to an independent audit. In exchange, the plaintiffs would drop the lawsuit. Jennifer looked at me and the other lead plaintiffs. We huddled for a whispered conversation, then I shook my head. We want a verdict. Jennifer stood. Your Honor, the plaintiffs declined the settlement offer. We wish to proceed. The trial continued for 2 more days. Jennifer called more witnesses, presented more evidence, and systematically dismantled every defense the HOA tried to mount. On the final day, both sides gave their closing arguments. Jennifer's closing was powerful. This case is about accountability. For too long, the defendants believed they were above the rules. They believed they could lie, cheat, and steal without consequence. The plaintiffs are asking you to send a clear message. No one is above the law, not even an HOA board. Hold them accountable. Award damages that will ensure this never happens again. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood and read the verdict. In the matter of Chen versus Clearwater Estates Homeowners Association, we find in favor of the plaintiffs on all counts. We award compensatory damages in the amount of $75,000 to be distributed among the plaintiffs. We award punitive damages in the amount of $250,000. We also find that the defendants engaged in fraud and recommend that the court refer this matter to law enforcement for criminal investigation. The courtroom exploded in cheers and applause. I felt tears streaming down my face. Jennifer hugged me and other plaintiffs crowded around, celebrating. Across the courtroom, Patricia Henderson sat frozen, her face ashen. Judge Reeves banged his gavel to restore order. The verdict is recorded. I am also granting the plaintiff's request for attorney's fees, which the defendants will pay in full. Additionally, I am ordering the immediate dissolution of the current HOA board and the appointment of a receiver to manage the HOA's affairs, until a new board can be elected by the homeowners. And as the jury recommended, I am referring this matter to the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges. It was a complete and total victory, but the story did not end there. Over the next 2 weeks, the fallout was spectacular. The Maricopa County Attorney's Office opened an investigation into Patricia Henderson and the HOA board. Patricia's bank records were subpoenaed, and investigators discovered that she had indeed been siphoning HOA funds into her personal account for over 2 years. She had been using the money to fund a lavish lifestyle that included vacations, designer clothes, and a new car. In April 2025, Patricia Henderson was arrested and charged with embezzlement, fraud, and forgery. 2 other board members were also charged as accomplices. The local news covered the perp walk extensively, and the image of Patricia in handcuffs became a viral meme in HOA reform circles. As for me, I faced a different kind of aftermath. The punitive damages award was $250,000, but the HOA did not have that much money in its accounts. After paying the compensatory damages and attorney's fees, the HOA was essentially bankrupt. The court-appointed receiver began liquidating HOA assets to satisfy the judgment. The biggest asset was the clubhouse. The property and building were valued at approximately $400,000, but there was a mortgage on it. The equity was around $275,000. The receiver put it up for sale to satisfy the judgment. I was sitting in Jennifer's office in early May when she brought up an interesting idea. "You know, Marcus, you could buy the clubhouse yourself," I laughed. "Why would I want to buy a clubhouse?" "Think about it. The judgment against the HOA is in your favor largely. You are owed a significant portion of those damages. If you buy the clubhouse at fair market value, the proceeds would go to satisfying the judgment, which means you would essentially be paying yourself. And then you would own the clubhouse, which you could use however you want. Rent it out for events, convert it to something else, or just hold it as an investment." The idea was wild, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. The clubhouse was a valuable property in a good location. And there was a certain poetic justice in me, the homeowner who had been harassed over $50, ending up owning the very building where that harassment had been orchestrated. I made an offer to the receiver for $275,000, the amount of equity in the property. The receiver accepted, and in June 2025, I became the owner of the Clearwater Estates Clubhouse. The transaction effectively satisfied the majority of the judgment, with the remaining amount paid out from other HOA assets and insurance settlements. The first thing I did as the new owner was change the locks. The second thing was to hold a community meeting in the event space to discuss the future of the property. Nearly 200 homeowners showed up, filling the large room. I stood at the front and addressed the crowd. I know the past year has been difficult for everyone in this community. The HOA that was supposed to serve us became a source of harassment and theft, but that chapter is closed. Patricia Henderson and her cronies are facing criminal charges, and they will never have power over this community again. There was applause, and I waited for it to die down before continuing. Now, as for this building, I own it outright. But I did not buy it to lord it over anyone or to continue the kind of abuse we have all suffered. I bought it because I believe this community deserves better. So here is what I am proposing. I will lease the clubhouse back to the HOA for $1 per year. The fitness center, the pool, the tennis courts, all of it remains available for community use. The only conditions are that the HOA operates transparently, follows its own rules, and never again engages in the kind of predatory enforcement that brought us here. The room was silent for a moment, then someone in the back started clapping. Others joined, and soon the entire room was on its feet, applauding. Several people came up to shake my hand and thank me. One elderly woman, the same one who had paid $1,000 in bogus fines, hugged me and whispered, "You saved this community." Over the next few months, Clearwater Estates transformed. A new HOA board was elected, composed of homeowners who were committed to transparency and fairness. The covenants were revised to include strict procedural safeguards against the kind of abuse that had occurred. Violations would require photographic evidence, homeowners would get proper notice and time to correct issues, and all fines would be subject to an independent review process. The clubhouse became a hub of community activity again. I hired a management company to handle day-to-day operations, and the space was booked almost every weekend for parties, weddings, and community events. The fitness center saw increased membership, and the pool was packed all summer. As for Patricia Henderson, her criminal trial took place in September 2025. She was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 3 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA, though given her financial situation, it was unlikely the HOA would ever see that money. The other 2 board members received lesser sentences, including probation and community service. The case attracted national attention and became a rallying cry for HOA reform. Several states, including Arizona, passed new laws strengthening homeowner protections and increasing oversight of HOA boards. My story was featured in newspapers, on podcasts, and even in a segment on a national news program. I became an accidental advocate for homeowner rights, speaking at community meetings and legislative hearings about the need for reform. But through it all, the most satisfying moment remained that day in court when the verdict was read. The look on Patricia Henderson's face when she realized she had lost everything, all because she had tried to bully a homeowner over a $50 fine that was never even legitimate. It was a masterclass in the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of standing up for what is right, even when the odds seem impossible. I still live in my house on Saguaro Lane in Clearwater Estates. My trash can still go out every Thursday morning at 6 and come back in at 8. No one has ever bothered me about them again. The community is thriving, Property values have actually increased since the scandal, and the clubhouse that I now own has become a symbol of resilience and justice. People sometimes ask me if it was worth it. Fighting a $50 fine cost me months of stress, thousands in legal fees before we won the judgment, and countless hours of my time. But when I see the community thriving, when I hear from homeowners who feel safe in their own homes again, when I think about the reforms that have been enacted because of this case, I know the answer. It was absolutely worth it. Every single moment. One Saturday afternoon in late October, I was at the clubhouse overseeing a community Halloween party. Kids were running around in costumes, parents were chatting over punch and cookies, and the event space was decorated with cobwebs and jack-o'-lanterns. I stood near the back, watching the scene with a sense of contentment. Jennifer Ortiz found me there. She had become a friend over the course of the case, and she stopped by occasionally to check in. "You did good, Marcus," she said, standing beside me. "We did good," I corrected. "I could never have won without you." "True. But you were willing to fight when most people would have just paid the $50 and moved on. That takes courage," I shrugged. "Or stubbornness," she laughed. "Sometimes they are the same thing, so what is next for you? Are you going to keep being an HOA crusader?" "I do not know. I think I have done my part. Now I just want to enjoy my life and my community." "Fair enough, but if you ever need a lawyer again, you know where to find me." "Hopefully, I will not need one. But if I do, you are the first person I will call." She smiled and headed back to the party. I stayed where I was, watching the community that had been torn apart by greed and abuse come together again. It was not perfect. There were still disagreements, still challenges, still the normal friction that comes from hundreds of families trying to live together in a planned community. But it was honest and transparent, and that made all the difference. As the sun set and the party wound down, I walked through the clubhouse one last time, turning off lights and making sure everything was secure. I paused in the lobby, looking at the empty reception desk where Debbie used to sit, where I had stood and demanded answers and been dismissed. So much had changed. The building was the same, but everything else was different. The people who had abused their power were gone, replaced by neighbors who genuinely cared about the community. The culture of fear had been replaced by one of cooperation. And I, the guy who just wanted to live quietly and peacefully in his home, had become the unlikely owner of a community clubhouse and an accidental champion of homeowner rights. I locked the front door and walked to my car. The Arizona evening was cool and pleasant, and the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I drove home, pulling into my garage and parking next to my trash cans, which sat neatly against the wall where they belonged. Inside my house, I made dinner and settled in to watch a movie. My phone buzzed with messages from other homeowners thanking me for organizing the party. I replied to each one, then put my phone away and focused on the movie. Later that night, as I was getting ready for bed, I thought about everything that had happened over the past 18 months. It had been a wild ride, from that first violation notice to the trial to becoming a property owner in a way I never expected. I had learned a lot about the law, about community, and about myself. Most importantly, I had learned that standing up for what is right matters, even when it is hard, even when it seems futile. Because you never know what impact your actions might have. My decision to fight a bogus $50 fine had not only vindicated me, but had also exposed corruption, protected other homeowners, led to criminal convictions, and sparked reform efforts across the country. All because I refused to be bullied. All because I said no to an unjust demand and followed through with action. As I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, I felt a deep sense of peace. The fight was over, justice had been served, and life could go on. The next morning, I woke up to a beautiful Sunday. I made coffee and sat on my back patio enjoying the quiet. Around 9, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, but I answered it anyway. "Is this Marcus Chen?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, speaking." "Mr. Chen, my name is Linda Torres. I live in a community called Desert Ridge in Tucson. I just read an article about your case against your HOA, and I was hoping I could talk to you." "Sure, what can I help you with?" "Well, I am having a problem with my HOA. They are trying to fine me $500 for painting my front door the wrong color, but the color is clearly listed as approved in the covenants. I have tried to fight it, but they will not listen. I was hoping you could give me some advice." I smiled. Here we go again. But this time I was ready. "Linda, the first thing you need to do is document everything. Save every email, every letter, every piece of correspondence. Then you need to find a good lawyer who specializes in HOA disputes. I can recommend someone if you are interested." "That would be amazing. Thank you so much." "No problem, and Linda, do not let them bully you. You have rights and you deserve to be treated fairly." "I will remember that. Thank you, Mr. Chen." We talked for a few more minutes, and I gave her Jennifer's contact information. After we hung up, I sat back and sipped my coffee. I had a feeling this was not the last call I would get from a homeowner dealing with HOA abuse. And maybe that was okay. Maybe I had found a new purpose, helping others navigate the same nightmare I had been through. But for now, on this beautiful Sunday morning, I was just going to enjoy my coffee, my home, and the knowledge that justice, however delayed, eventually prevails. The months continued to pass, and life in Clearwater Estates settled into a comfortable rhythm. The new HOA board proved to be everything the old one was not: fair, transparent, and responsive. Community meetings were well attended and civil. Violation notices were rare and always included clear photographic evidence and proper timelines. The community pool was renovated, new landscaping was installed in the common areas, and the clubhouse calendar was booked solid with events. I continued to receive calls and emails from homeowners in other communities dealing with abusive HOAs. I helped where I could, offering advice and connecting people with resources. Some cases resolved quickly, others dragged on for months. But each one reinforced my belief that homeowners needed better protections and that HOA boards needed more oversight. In January 2026, I was invited to testify before the Arizona State Legislature about HOA reform. I stood in the Capitol building in Phoenix and told my story to a committee of lawmakers. I showed them the backdated documents, the compressed timelines, the evidence of embezzlement. I explained how a $50 fine had spiraled into a $250,000 judgment because one HOA board thought it was above the law. The committee listened intently, asking questions and taking notes. Several lawmakers expressed shock and outrage at what had happened. One representative told me, "Mr. Chen, your case has opened a lot of eyes. We are going to make sure this kind of abuse cannot happen again." True to their word, the legislature passed a comprehensive HOA reform bill in March 2026. The new law required HOAs to follow strict procedures for violations and fines, gave homeowners the right to an independent hearing, mandated regular audits of HOA finances, and created an ombudsman position to handle homeowner complaints. It was not perfect, but it was a huge step forward. The bill was signed into law on March 20th, 2026, and I was invited to attend the signing ceremony. I stood in the governor's office, surrounded by legislators and other advocates, and watched as the governor signed the bill into law. It was surreal to think that my fight over $50 had contributed to changes that would affect hundreds of thousands of homeowners across Arizona. After the ceremony, I drove back to Clearwater Estates. It was early evening, and the sun was setting over the desert, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my car for a moment, just taking it all in. My home, my community, my clubhouse, all of it hard-won, all of it meaningful. I got out of the car and walked to my front door. As I unlocked it, I noticed an envelope tucked into the doorframe. For a split second, my heart rate spiked, old instincts kicking in. But then I saw that it was just a handwritten note on plain paper, not an official HOA envelope. I opened it and read, "Dear Marcus, thank you for everything you have done for this community. You stood up when no one else would, and you fought for all of us. We are forever grateful. Your neighbors." Below the message were dozens of signatures, names I recognized from around the neighborhood. I felt a lump in my throat as I read through them all. This was why I had fought. Not for money, not for revenge, but for this. A community where people felt safe, respected, and grateful to be neighbors. A place where justice mattered and where bullies did not win. I folded the note carefully and carried it inside. I put it on my refrigerator, held in place by a magnet, where I could see it every day. Then I made dinner, settled on my couch, and reflected on the incredible journey that had brought me here. It had started with an injustice, a $50 fine that never should have been assessed. It had escalated into a legal battle that consumed a year and a half of my life. And it had ended with victory, not just for me, but for an entire community and for homeowners across the state. The clubhouse that now bore my name on the deed was not just a building. It was a symbol of accountability, of the idea that no one, not even an HOA board, is above the law. It was a reminder that ordinary people can fight back against corruption and win. And as I sat in my living room that night, surrounded by the quiet comfort of my home, I knew that every moment of the fight had been worth it. Every sleepless night, every dollar spent, every hour in court, all of it had led to this: justice, reform, and a community restored. Patricia Henderson was in prison. Her co-conspirators were serving their sentences, and the system that had enabled their abuse had been dismantled and rebuilt with safeguards. Homeowners in Clearwater Estates and across Arizona now had protections they did not have before. And I had a story to tell, a story that would hopefully inspire others to stand up when they faced similar injustices. The fight was over. The battle was won. And life, finally, could move forward in peace. But I would never forget the lessons I had learned. That justice is worth fighting for, that communities are stronger when they stand together, and that sometimes the smallest spark of resistance can ignite a fire that changes everything. As March 2026 drew to a close and the anniversary of the trial verdict approached, I felt a deep sense of closure and satisfaction. The nightmare was behind me. The future was bright. And the clubhouse, my clubhouse, stood as a testament to the power of one person refusing to back down. I went to bed that night with a smile on my face, grateful for the journey, proud of the outcome, and ready for whatever came next. Because now I knew. When you stand up for what is right, when you refuse to be bullied, when you fight for justice no matter the cost, you can change the world. Even if it starts with just $50.